All right, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for Games History Hour, a free virtual program from the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum and the International Society of Olympic Historians. I am so glad that you have joined us this morning for today's program, Atlanta 1996, the Centennial Games. Games History Hour is part of the museum's commitment to sharing the stories of Olympic and Paralympic Games in meaningful, accessible ways to audiences everywhere. Programs like this are made possible through support from our community. Donations and memberships directly help us to continue offering these free programs and bringing athlete stories to life in this particular format. Today, I am so excited to welcome three amazing speakers, all of whom have personal connections to the Atlanta 1996 Olympic Games. First, Shannon Miller is a two-time Olympian, winner of 7 Olympic medals, including 2 in Atlanta, and leader of the Magnificent Seven. She was inducted into the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Hall of Fame in 2006. She's the founder and CEO of Salto Health, which connects cancer survivors with the products and services often needed during their cancer journey. Shannon is a mother of 2, a sought-after motivational speaker, and a sports analyst. Shannon, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure for sure. George Herthler is a member of the International Society of Olympic Historians, and his connections to the 96 Centennial Games actually start in 1988 with the earliest days of the city's Olympic bid committee. He wrote the city's 5-volume bid books, which summarized Atlanta's Olympic vision for the International Olympic Committee. He's a filmmaker, researcher, and author of several books, including The Genius of Sport, Pierre de Coubertin, Paris, and the Birth of the Modern Olympic Movement. His documentary about the Atlanta Games, The Games in Black and White, has been nominated for 4 Southeastern Emmy Awards, and I understand you're going to get the results of that this week. So wish you the best of luck, George.
Fingers crossed. Thank you, Lindsay.
My pleasure. And Dina Gerson is the former director of Olympic marketing at the Coca-Cola Company and a seasoned sports marketing executive with over 3 decades of experience. Her area of expertise was management of partnerships and relationships on behalf of Coke with over 100 Olympic and Paralympic athletes, including Simone Biles, Michelle Kwan, and Alex Morgan. Dina worked on 12 Olympic Games, 10 Final Fours, 5 Olympic torch relays, 2 Super Bowls, FIFA World Cup, and the Special Olympics World Games. So Dina, thank you so much for being here this morning as well.
Thank you, Lindsay. Honored to be on this panel with these esteemed panelists.
So to our audience who's watching today, throughout the conversation, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We'll be sharing resources and helping guide your experience there, and we'll have some time for Q&A at the end of our discussion. So with that, I'm going to jump right in. I want to start by putting these Atlanta Games in context. 1996, the Centennial Games. George, can you set the stage for us? What made these games so historically significant?
Well, the fact that they were the Centennial Olympic Games, the 100th anniversary of the first modern games, which occurred in Athens in 1896, as you'll recall, the first games in the American South. And, we were only 12 years after Los Angeles 1984. And so the Olympic spirit was still very strong in the country because those games in 84 had such an incredible impact. Lindsay, most people considered Atlanta a long shot. Most people didn't think Atlanta had a chance. We were up against number 1, the prohibitive favorite Athens, Greece, as you recall. They had hosted the games 100 years before. They felt they had a moral right to it. And they said that to the IOC members, which ended up backfiring on them. And then there was Melbourne, Australia, a great sporting city that everybody knows from, the tennis open down there and other events. There was Toronto, Canada, had a beautiful bid on its lakefront looking out over Lake Ontario. And Manchester, England, and Bucharest were sort of considered also rans, I guess. But nobody thought Atlanta really had a chance. But then Billy Payne and Andy Young teamed up, and we took the civil rights history of Atlanta, And we made that sort of a center point of our conversation with Olympic IOC members all over the world, essentially saying that this city has the moral authority because the values of the civil rights movement, the values of the Olympic movement really intersect beautifully. We have the moral authority to talk about the idealism of the games in a new way. And you will introduce the American South to the world because no one knows where Atlanta is right now. And so that's how we got started. That's a little bit of context.
I appreciate that. That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about Atlanta having the moral authority. Thanks so much for sharing that. As we continue to put the games in context, Shannon, I would love to hear from you from an athlete perspective. What was your thought going into these games? Did the fact that it was the 100th anniversary did that play into it at all?
Well, to put it in context personally, I was only 19. So for me, coming off of the Barcelona Games in 1992, and going through kind of a rough patch where I almost stopped competing in the summer of 93 after those World Championships, it was one of the things that kept me going, because what I realized during that time was it wasn't that I didn't want to do gymnastics, I just didn't have any other goals. And so for me, having the Olympics in the US on home soil was just something that drew me in so much that made me want to work out 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, and keep going just for that opportunity to compete for my country on home soil was just such an amazing thought. And then to have it be the 100th anniversary was just, I don't know, everything just kind of meshed. And it's so interesting to hear the history of it, because for me, looking back, without George, without Billy Payne, without all of these people, and we talk about sport being a team effort, even when it seems like maybe it's an individual sport. It is a team effort. And if not for all of these people who brought the games, I might not have had the experience or the opportunities that I had. So I kind of look at it in those contexts of, all of the amazing people that did what they do best to allow me to do what I do best.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate thinking about it sort of as a larger team that, has to come together to put the games on in the first place. So yeah, that's great. And Dina, so many people associate these games with Coca-Cola. Can you talk about how that relationship developed, and did it play a special role since these games were in Atlanta, the home of Coke?
Absolutely. The partnership between the Coca-Cola Company, the IOC, and Team USA began 98 years ago, if you can imagine, at the 1928 Amsterdam Summer Olympic Games. A lot of people don't know that, but if you can imagine this, a freighter, a huge, large ship, transported not only the U.S. Olympic team, but 1,000 cases of Coca-Cola, it really started the longest continuous corporate sponsorship in Olympic history. So that was 98 years ago. And Coke obviously had a presence at the Amsterdam Games. They provided refreshment to athletes as well as spectators. And this was huge for the Coca-Cola Company. It was a big win because Coke was not in Europe. And so it introduced the brand to European audiences. That was amazing. And that is something so important to the Coca-Cola Company, tying the brands to opportunities. And what a beautiful gift this was to the European community. And just as a side note, in 2 years, everyone's already talking about LA 28, but the Coca-Cola Company will celebrate 100 years of being the longest continuous partner. So talk about Centennial celebration. There's going to be a big one in LA for the Coca-Cola Company and the IOC, Team USA, USOPC, and all the athletes and everybody involved. Looking forward to it.
Definitely. Gosh, 100 years. That's pretty fantastic. There were so many, historic moments that happened at these 1996 games. So I want to talk through some of those. And I'm curious, sort of just as a group, I'm jumping around on our agenda here, but as a group, when you think back to these games, what is maybe one or two top moments that you think about, that you remember? So Shannon, do you want to go first there?
Okay, I'll try to steer away from some of the ones that we will all think of, like Muhammad Ali lighting the torch. I mean, that was just incredible. I remember us gathered around the TV because we had to compete the next morning, so we don't get to walk at the opening ceremony. So watching that was amazing. But for me, I'm always taken back to those moments that maybe no one sees. No one knows about. They're not maybe broadcast on television. The moment that you kind of have that calm right before you walk out into the arena for competition. You go from the back gym warm up and you have this 10-foot space of where for me it was the calm comes in, you understand what you're about to do, the nerves are there, but you're keeping the adrenaline at bay because you want it to hit at the exact right time that you need it during that routine. So that moment, there was the moment JC Phelps had a tumultuous warm up during the team final night. And our first event was uneven bars. She was the first athlete up for Team USA, setting the tone for the night. And she went up and performed probably the most beautiful routine she had ever done. And when she stuck her landing, it was like we just knew that all the dominoes were going to fall into place. So there's moments like that that I love. Obviously, landing on floor exercise or balance beam when you hit a routine that you've trained thousands of times and you finally do it exactly right at the right time in front of this hometown audience. It's the best feeling. And so those are the moments that stay in my heart and stay with me.
So I'm sorry, I just got goosebumps listening to you talk about that. So thank you very much. That was really wonderful. George, what about you? What's a moment that stands out to you from these games?
I'm sorry, were you talking to me? I did not
Yes.
quite hear that. Who are
George,
you
if you can
addressing?
share with us one of your favorite
Oh,
moments from 96.
I have Lindsay. I have 1,000 great memories, and Shannon took the top one with Muhammad Ali. Janet Evans climbing those stairs. That's in my film, The Game's Black and White. But it's just extraordinary when she described that moment and when he held before the world that torch up with his hand shaking with the Parkinson's. And then I happened to be at the finish line. Oh, there you go. Dina's
And
got
there
the
we go.
torch.
Dina has the torch.
I happened to be at the finish line when Michael Johnson broke the world record in the 200 meters, and that was just the most amazing thing. That picture remains so iconic. Gail Devers repeating twice, but because the bombing took the heart of the games in some ways was ripped out by the bomb, and then of course we had that incredible recovery where Andy Young spoke to the people in the park, and Andy and Billy and all the people who were leading the games didn't know what was going to happen when they heard that bomb went off at 1:30 on Saturday night before Michael Johnson was ready to, going to compete. And they were all worried that the volunteers wouldn't come out, that the workers wouldn't come out the next day. And when they got up in the morning, the buses were leaving the village on time. Every venue was reporting they had more volunteers than they had actually scheduled because people thought maybe somebody won't show up. I'm going to go in and make sure this happens. And that moment, when the games got rolling again, nobody missed an event. The spectators didn't stop. They came and filled the stadiums. Atlanta held the record. I think it still holds the record for most tickets sold, 8.5 million at the games. They filled all the venues. That was great. But for me, I had been a marathon runner for a number of years, and we were promoting our civil rights history. That Atlanta was an extension and a fulfillment of the civil rights history. Andy said, I want to do this because if we win, regardless of whether we win or not, it's going to bring the people of Atlanta together. And so symbolically for me, the last event of the game was the men's marathon. And Nelson Mandela had gotten out of Robben Island prison in 1990, and he came to the United States, and the second stop on his tour was Atlanta to visit the home of Martin Luther King Jr. and to pay respects. And when the marathon was getting close to the end, it became pretty obvious that there was a South African runner who was empowered by Nelson Mandela because Nelson Mandela loved sport to running in our games. Josiah Thugwane came across the finish line first and won the first marathon gold medal for a South African. That was a thrilling moment for me.
That sounds pretty thrilling. So we have some really nice bookends here. We talked about the very beginning of the games and then the last event of the games. So Dina Gerson, what stands out to you? What's your most iconic moment?
I have a lot as well, but I'm going to start before the games when Juan Antonio Samaranch, who was the head of the IOC at the time, 7 years before 96, mentioned that the city of Atlanta was going to get the Olympic Games. And there was a big watch party at Underground Atlanta at the time in 1989. And I can remember being there with all my co-colleagues and everybody talking about who they were going to host at the games. And I said to everybody, if you're in your same job in 7 years, then, we've got a challenge. And so, since then, that became my dream. The Olympic pin trading. Somebody noticed I'm wearing an Izzy pin, a Coke pin, and a United States Olympic and Paralympic Museum pin. I have thousands of pins and even more memories from all the pins that were traded. There's such an opportunity at the games to make those memories. The friendly volunteers, we were the Southern hospitality that everybody was so craving. We also customized everything. Shannon, I have an Atlanta 96 gymnastics
I love
bottle
it.
we'll send to you. But again, everybody's memory is the torch passing from Janet to Muhammad Ali. And yes, what a phenomenal experience to be in that stadium. Nobody knew. I mean, it was such a secret. It was such a well-kept secret. Janet and Billy Payne and the couple of people who knew did a beautiful job making sure that that was a secret. And again, the other piece would be the Olympic Torch Relay. The Coca-Cola Company is a sponsor of the Olympic Torch Relay. And so to have all these people come up and tell us they ran in, XYZ city, not only in Georgia, but all across the country. And that was one of the projects that I was responsible for. So again, just so many amazing memories, so many people that I'm still connected to today. And Atlanta was my first. I'll never forget my first, but I've worked on 12 with the Coca-Cola Company and a couple since then.
I think
Dina, I
Atlanta.
have to tell you, I got to run which it was amazing. I got to run the torch in 96. So you can't see it on camera, but it's right up here. It's the only piece of Olympic memorabilia I have in my office, but it is the torch.
Where did you run, Shannon?
I ran in Oklahoma.
Oh, of
Yes,
course. How could I
I
forget?
actually got to put it like on into like a cinder on a train, and then the train would take it off. It was very cool.
Trains, planes, and automobiles.
Yes.
And I love it when there's meaning to that. So I don't know if everybody knows your Oklahoma City connection.
Yes, well, I was raised in Oklahoma, trained in Oklahoma. Yes, so I got to do the torch there, which was great. The only thing I do remember though is it was very windy. If you know Oklahoma, you know it's windy, and the flame zipped down my arm, and and kind of, but I held it, and I'm like, just stay, and so like my arm was like a little bit singed, but it got on the train and it got going.
Oh my gosh. Wow, there's
The things
something that
you
I would.
remember.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I suppose being singed by the Olympic flame would be one of those standout memories, perhaps. All right. George, I wanted to ask you, you wrote the 5 volume bid books for
Yes.
Atlanta's Olympic bid for the 100th anniversary of the modern games. So why did you feel Atlanta was the right choice for those games? Why Atlanta?
Well, I moved to Atlanta out of college in 1973 to be part of the New South, to be at the epicenter of social change in the United States, because that's where the civil rights movement was born. And I was interested in that history and wanted to be part of that. And so in the 1980s, I was a freelance writer, and Ted Turner was launching all these networks, and I was doing a lot of work for him and Coca-Cola and other companies, and got hired to write the Olympic bid. I didn't know much about the Olympic bid. I mean, about the Olympic Games, other than I was a great fan and I loved the competition and I had memories from childhood, and I was always a boxing fan because my grandmother was. So I loved Cassius Clay when he fought in Rome, and I followed his entire career as he became Muhammad Ali and conquered the world. And I saw him one day on the street of Philadelphia and shook his hands, and it was just an amazing thing. But when I got hired to write the bid at the end of '88 and was sent to Lausanne, Switzerland, and discovered that this is not just an Olympic Games, but it's a movement, that the movement is its mission is to unite the world in friendship and peace through sport, articulated very clearly by Baron Pierre de Coubertin back in 1894 when he founded the Modern Games with incredible support for America, which is going to be part of the story we're going to tell in the exhibit that's going to open at the Olympic Museum next month. But when I saw that, when I read that, I realized that these Olympic Games are something really special. They're the most visible expression of the world coming together in full harmony, in solidarity, in unity, and that our world needs that kind of message and that kind of movement. And that was Atlanta's dream, with the civil rights movement. And so I thought that Atlanta was absolutely the right city. I felt like it was destiny. When you're in a campaign, Dina can tell you this, I know Shannon can tell you this, you can tell us, you can say the same thing, Lindsay. When you're in a campaign, there are markers along the way that make you feel you're in the right place at the right time. And that happened to us again and again and again during the campaign. And nobody expected Atlanta to win, but in the summer of 1990, the Evaluation Commission had visited all the cities and they released their report. And the final presentation was going to be in Tokyo in September 1990. And Atlanta came out #1 on the technical grades and the support. And at that point, we were all like, oh my God. And as Ginger Watkins said, this isn't just a pipe dream. This could very well be a reality. And 3 months later, when Samaranch, as Dina remembered, rightly opened that envelope and proclaimed that Atlanta was the host. That was one of the most euphoric moments of my life. I was in the ballroom in Tokyo, and we partied all night long. It was just unbelievable, life-changing.
I was holding down the fort with everybody at Underground Atlanta while you were in the ballroom.
My wife and daughter and son were all there on the steps with you.
That is just fantastic. And George, so since hearing that you were not, I guess, an Olympic insider prior to this, that really kind of changed your life in a lot of ways because of all the work that you've done since then.
Well, when we won September 18th, 1990, within 6 months, all the cities bidding for the 2000 Olympic Games came to Atlanta, made a pilgrimage to Atlanta to find out what Billy and Andy had done and what the secret sauce was, right? How did you get these members to vote for you when everybody thought Athens was going to carry the day? And Billy kindly sent them all over to talk to me and my design partner, Brad Copeland. And Istanbul walked into our office, sat down, and looked at me and said, "We want you to write our Olympic bid." And Istanbul, Turkey. And I said, "I don't know anything about Istanbul." They said, "Well, we believe that this team could help us because the IOC just published a new set of guidelines, and almost every page in the guidelines says, 'See Atlanta.'" We had done a set of bid books that they decided to adopt as a format. And that convinced us. So I ended up making 15 trips to Istanbul, writing their campaign, then went on to Stockholm, then learned the Winter Games in Klagenfurt, then worked on the Beijing campaign, became the lead writer on the Beijing campaign, then Vancouver, all the way up through the last campaign I worked on was LA 2028. I was just a part-time writer, but I did a lot of speeches and helped them win. So it's been a thrilling career. And across the course of the last 30 years, I've become an expert in the philosophy of Olympism and the life and times of Pierre de Coubertin. So that's what fills me with passion, because his vision was to unite the world in friendship and peace through sport. Nothing does that like the Olympic movement and the Paralympic movement.
That's very true. I don't know if you can see it. You're getting applause from our audience right now, George.
Oh, that's good.
And I second that.
Thank you, audience.
So Shannon, I wanna come back to you for a minute. Your balance beam routine in Atlanta is considered one of the greatest in Olympic history. Can you walk us through what you were thinking before and during your performance?
Yes, because I can remember every little moment. It's interesting because, I always say people remember the gold medal moments, but a lot of times we forget about the maybe hundreds of thousands of falls that happen before that moment. And for me, it was a rocky road. My 92 games were kind of pretty much clean from start to finish. Atlanta was a little bit rocky. I had two amazing competitions during the team round, the compulsories and the optionals. All around was going good, up until I stepped out of bounds on floor exercise, which was my third event. And I didn't realize at the time, but apparently I had been maybe in first place up until that step. And so that one step cost me any chance of a medal that night. And I was heartbroken. Not that I ever think about it or relive that moment over and over in my head, but it was a tough night. And then I kind of regrouped. All right, I've got to focus forward. So I went into the vault finals. And I wasn't doing a particularly difficult vault, but I ran down and I got off on my steps, and which is just very random, but I ended up on my backside. And so there was that moment of, you're embarrassed, but you're also thinking, how did this possibly happen? It wasn't that hard of a vault. I never missed it in training. And then splat. And I remember venting to my mother that night. We didn't have cell phones, we didn't have internet or social media. So just that night, I talked to her on the phone and just vented. I don't know what's going on. I had these great competitions. And now, my whole career comes down to balance beam. Last 90 seconds of my entire Olympic career. And here it is, the most feared event in gymnastics. And this is what I have to look forward to. And what if I fall? What if I fail? What if I let everybody down? And she said, let me just ask you one thing. Did you do the work? At other competitions and training, did you do the work? And I thought about it and I said, well, yes. I mean, I don't always get it right, but I always have done the work. And she said, I know. And that's why I know you can walk into that arena, head held high, confident that you've done everything you could possibly do up to that moment to get it right. And whatever happens after that's going to happen, but you can always be proud of that work that you put in. Yeah. And I thought about all of that night. And on the evening of the balance beam competition, I went up, I saluted the judge, I held my hands over the top of the beam for just a couple of extra seconds. I took an extra deep breath, and I just remember that moment of thinking, I just want to enjoy this. This is my last routine at an Olympics. I want to enjoy this. And I will never forget that, the arena is at 40,000 or some odd people in that arena, and it was completely silent. I mean, absolute silence, which is probably more, I feel it's more intimidating than having things going on and hearing loud noises. But I did hear one gentleman up on the left side of the audience, and he yells down, hey, shut your flash off. He's like yelling at someone to shut their camera flash off. But I could hear it clear as day. And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, isn't that sweet? He's trying to make sure my routine goes okay. And then I kind of had to snap myself back to the moment of, nope, let's think about the next skill. And that routine, it just went so quickly. And all of a sudden I was at the end, just saying a little prayer, please let me lay on my feet tonight. And I hurdled toward the end of the beam. And I just remember punching off the beam, one twist, two flips. And when my feet hit the floor, it was that moment you realize you're standing up and you finish the routine and you don't know what the score is. And you don't know if there's a medal or what color it might be. And yet I wanted to live in that moment, because it's that again, it goes back to that feeling of just doing what you've trained to do at the right time and when it matters most. And so that was just the most fulfilling feeling. And then to end up with a gold medal after that it was amazing for me, because my entire career, from the time I was maybe 6 years old, I had decided at that moment I just wasn't going to be afraid of beam. I had a hard time with bars because the bars used to be oval and I couldn't really grasp them very well. I wasn't big enough or heavy enough to kind of put the springs on the, kind of compress the springs on the springboard. So I had a harder time with vault and bars, and even floor tumbling just wasn't really my thing. And it wasn't very flexible. But beam, I thought, okay, I'm just not going to be scared of it. And from making that decision at 6 years old, I was just going to go for it, to ending up with a gold medal by the end of my career is just it's just a little crazy to think about.
That is just amazing. And I'm sorry, I have to laugh to hear you say that you weren't very flexible. That is
I was not.
Yeah.
I used to try to sleep in the splits because I thought maybe I'd get a little extra in. It doesn't work. Don't ever try that.
noted. Not that that was much of a worry for me, but I will remember that. So, I also wanted to ask you when my colleague Annie and I were working on sort of an outline for this event and some of our questions, we wanted to ask you about Kerri Strug's vault. So from her injury to the victory, how did it feel to be on the floor and be watching this with your teammates? Can you walk us through that?
You know, it's interesting. I had not watched the actual full coverage, like the actual NBC coverage of the games until 2020, when me and Amanda were doing like a live Instagram that NBC asked us to do and watch it and talk about it. So I a lot of times didn't understand some of the questions that I was getting. I'm like, what? Why are you asking that? And then I did after watching the coverage because it's so different being down on the floor. We are at the very end of a very long vault runway, and you can hardly see what's going on, kind of beyond the actual vault. And so when she did her second vault, everyone's cheering and going crazy, and then the moment was when the trainers and coaches went up on the podium, because that's a big no-no. You don't do that. And so when that happened, that was a moment of going, wait a second. I think a lot of people go back and forth about the gold medal. For us, those of us who had finished, we'd done the math. We're like, yes. Kerri did not know. Kerri was in the midst of performing. And so here you have Kerri who is just all in. The adrenaline's going, and I'm here to compete as part of Team USA. And I've heard her speak about this, and it's, of course, yes, you go, right? And this is what you've trained for. And so after she had vaulted and they kind of whisked her away, they whisked us away as well. And people don't see the chaos that tends to happen, or at least did at that time for us, where you're whisked back to this holding area. You're throwing on your award suit that you have to wear to go out. People are yelling at you. Everyone's got headsets on and they're go, go, go. You're in real time because you're in the US and it's NBC. And so they're getting you back out on the floor. And I'll tell you, there is this one moment I come back to, and I still cry every time I think about it, because they're yelling at us to get out on the floor, march out, we got to go. And not one of us moved. And we said, we go as a team. We go out as a team. And it was just that one moment. Now, luckily, they came bringing Kerri up right after that, so we didn't get in trouble. But she came up, they carried her out to the floor for the award ceremony. But the funny thing is they just left her there. So during the award ceremony, we're trying to be in the moment, but I'm also kind of like, you'll see me leaning over to Dominique Moceanu on the other side. I'm like, we need to help Kerri up. Like she's not gonna be able to get up there. And so it's, the mom, the logistics in me is coming out. And then after the award ceremony, it was so incredible. I mean, you actually get to be on home soil at an Olympic Games and see the American flag being raised and hear your national anthem, and they give you a gold medal. And it's very surreal. But then kind of after all of this amazing moment, we're like, oh, okay, we need to get her back down. And so, I don't honestly know how she did it. Just the whole thing, not even just the vault. I'm just talking about the vault and then trying to recoup, and you've got to go out for an award ceremony and the chaos of it. And yet, she pulled it together and she did it. And that team was just that entire team was such a special, special team. And to this day, we just still feel like it's just a special group of girls.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Dina, you look like you had a comment. Did you have a
No,
reaction to that? Okay.
I just think, I mean, again, I was there, George was there. We all just so proud of all of you, how you all came together and are still close to this day. It's very special.
It's
Yeah, for sure.
magnificent.
It is magnificent.
That's why they called you the
Magnificent.
Magnificent Seven. Great name.
Yep,
Who came up with
absolutely.
it, Shannon?
I don't honestly know. We were the first that anyone had ever named. I mean, you had the Dream Team in '92, but as far
Yeah.
as gymnastics went, they weren't naming teams. We didn't have a name in '92. We're just the
Right.
'92 team. But yeah, I'm not even sure where it came from, but it stuck. And I think we've leaned into it, not because we think we're magnificent, but because the specialness of the moment was magnificent.
Yes, for sure. For sure. Dina, I wanna come back to you for a moment. Um, Looking back 30 years later now, can you share with us some of the long-term impacts of these games on the city of Atlanta? How did they change Atlanta?
Wow. So the 1996 Olympic Games truly put Atlanta and Georgia on the map. So many people internationally had no idea, had never heard of Georgia, or maybe they had the Georgia that's close to Russia that isn't this Georgia. And so it was such an opportunity, but all of a sudden we turned from a regional hub into an international or global city, which was very exciting. We're still feeling the benefits. The metro Atlanta area has grew from 3.5 to 5.5 million by 2011 just because of that. One of the best gifts of the games was the creation of Centennial Olympic Park. It brought hotels, residential housing down, tourists in a very underdeveloped area. And downtown Atlanta was a place people never wanted to go. And all of a sudden, we had this incredible Centennial Olympic Park, and that's where everybody met. I will also say that Atlanta established itself by hosting an incredible games, uh, themselves as a premier venue partner. So all of a sudden, we were getting the Super Bowls and the NCAA championships and the FIFA World Cup this summer. It really also increased our convention business. So we've had so many good things happen because the games were here. But finally, I'll say the Athletes Village, which most people don't know, the Athletes Village dorms were repurposed into student housing for Georgia State University students as well as Georgia Tech. And that was a big gift, for downtown revitalization for both and a gift to the city of Atlanta. It's just, we're still so enamored. And it's funny, I was at a gala Friday night and Gloria Estefan was the special guest. And she gets up there and says, Atlanta, I've loved you since Atlanta 96. And I got to sing at the perform at the opening ceremony. And it's just such a treat to hear all these different people. I was with somebody last week who said a trivia question was, what are the colors of the five rings? Just somebody's always bringing up something. And it'll be interesting because the FIFA World Cup, which the Coca-Cola Company is a sponsor of as well. It's very exciting, but it'll be very different. And I can't wait for people to compare and contrast because, like I said, Atlanta was my first. And one of the reasons we probably got the FIFA World Cup was because of how well Atlanta performed as a city during the 96 games with trauma, and everything else, like George mentioned, we came through and rallied and turned it around, and we didn't know if we were going to or not.
Right, right. George, I'd love to hear your perspective on that question as well, thinking about the long-term impacts of the games on Atlanta.
Well, Dina nailed it. I mean, Dina got it exactly right. Centennial Olympic Park was the epicenter of the games, and since the flame went out, there have been over 3.5 billion in investment around the perimeter of the park. So you had an aquarium, one of the world's greatest aquariums built on the center on this side of the park. You had a new hotel, the first one built downtown in like 15 years. You had the world of Coke right across the street on the end of the park. You had a children's museum. The College Football Hall of Fame moved right to the edge of Centennial Olympic Park. In the center of the park, you have the Coubertin statue that I commissioned and built, which is still one of the great photo platforms. You've got the Fountain of the Rings, where kids from all over the city come all summer long to dance in the water shooting up from the Fountain of the Rings. You had CNN across the street. Then, of course, you had the World Congress Center, which hosted 7 of our sporting events right across the street. And so the park became this connective tissue between the downtown corridor and the World Congress Center. It used to be a dilapidated area. It was a brilliant idea that Billy had, and it was the largest park built in the center of an American city in 25 years. And then the Georgia Dome, which we built, where Shannon competed on one side of a black curtain and the basketball tournament occurred on the other side. By the way, we didn't mention we had Dream Team 2 there. They were as brilliant as the Barcelona Dream Team with Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley and these fantastic athletes. And then the Georgia Dome later, you had Phillips, you had the Omni and that hosted volleyball, and it became Phillips Arena where the Hawks play. And then the Georgia Dome became the Mercedes-Benz Stadium for our football and our soccer team. So we got a professional soccer franchise. And the Atlanta Sports Council calls that area from Centennial Park across all those venues, it calls it the championship campus. And Dina is absolutely right that the whole country and the world begin to understand that Atlanta offers a campus where you can host not only the large event, but 20 hospitality events around it without ever going to the same spot twice. And it's really quite amazing. And we would not be hosting the World Cup today. We would not be hosting the World Cup today if it wasn't for the Olympic Games in Centennial Olympic Park. And the largest development going on in Atlanta right now is called Centennial Yards. And it is just building an extension on that whole massive development downtown. So it's a wonderful influence. I think the greater influence came in terms of the relationships that were built between the people from all parts of our community that came together. That's the softer side of the legacy that you don't see. It's not a physical facade, but the population of Atlanta not only exploded, the demographics changed. Atlanta had been 65% Black in the city environment before the games. Today it's balanced. Counties outside of Atlanta had been all white. Today they're balanced. And we really did get a much more integrated and a more beautiful city that was in some ways fulfilling the promise of the civil rights movement. So,
George, I'm just going to thank you for bringing up the world of Coke and all the assets in downtown close to the park. I can't believe I didn't say that, but it was nice to hear it from somebody else, which reminded me, Coke had land next to Centennial Olympic Park, and we created Coke Olympic City. So that was the interactive area where you could walk on a beam that was very low to the floor, Shannon. It was not regulation heights, trust me. That would have been a lawsuit coming by everybody. But that was the place you could buy merch. You could do the long jump and the high jump and race, Michael Johnson's records, etc. But that land after the games from Olympic City, so we had all this land, we donated it to the National Civil and Human Rights Museum. So we gave the land as a gift and partnered with our friends at the National Civil and Human Rights Museum. And also, we then took the world of Coke that was at Underground Atlanta, underperforming, into the space where next to Centennial Olympic Park, another draw by the aquarium and the College Football Hall of Fame, etc., so that there was this cluster that George was alluding to. And somebody in the chat mentioned the Olympic bricks. Yes, everybody goes. I was actually there with Annie from the Olympic Museum last Sunday looking for my brick. But that's just,
people still text me those. Like, oh, I saw your brick.
Right, exactly. That was it was huge back in the day, and such a special significance and such a gift to the city that we still have.
That is fantastic. It seems like it's in a way hard to overstate the importance of these games to the city of Atlanta.
no
Well, I
question.
love, I got to help launch the new kit for Atlanta United as coming up to the World Cup, and it's all you've seen it, George, I'm sure. It's all green and gold. It is, their emblem is kind of like where a medal would be. It is just so nostalgic from 30 years ago. It's amazing.
That's really fantastic. We have about 15 minutes left, so we've gotten a few questions in the chat and we had a couple submitted in advance. So I do want to pivot to some audience questions. And the first one, Shannon, I know you have not been here to the museum yet in Colorado Springs, but we do have your white scrunchie on display at the museum. So can you tell us how that feels to have a piece of those games here on display from you?
Oh, it's so crazy. And I cannot wait to get out to the museum. I want to bring the kids and the whole family, but because I've heard such amazing things. But it's one of those things when I got the call and I was asked if I could, donate something or lend something to the museum. And I'm thinking, oh, well, the medal or what are they wanting? I'm not even sure if I can find like all my leotards. Some of those are already at other museums and whatnot, and they asked for my scrunchie. And it really kind of hit hard because that is like the one piece that is unlike anyone else's uniform or medal or anything like that. I mean, it is the thing that was with me through, every good and every bad and just the whole history. A lot of people don't know that. So the white scrunchie is just my white scrunchie, and my balance beam coach, Peggy Liddick, she painstakingly glued on, bedazzled my scrunchie with just special rhinestones, and it's covered in hairspray and probably disgusting, but it's the one thing that it was always with me in competition. It's your security blanket in some ways. I didn't have a lot of things that I felt like were jinxes or any of that, but I had my white scrunchie. And so it's really special that that's in the museum because it's something kind of everyone ended up knowing me by was that white scrunchie.
Right. It's iconic for sure. I know it's something that a lot of our tour guides here at the museum point out to visitors, and everyone's like, oh, yeah, I remember that. So thank you so much for allowing us to display such a fantastic piece of Olympic history. We really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
In looking through our questions that we've been coming in, I know we have a lot of Izzy fans. So Dina, I know you're wearing an Izzy pin. I wanted to share that in Milan a couple months ago, we actually saw an Izzy spray painted onto the side of a building, onto a rolling door. So Izzy lives on. There Izzy is.
It says
Wanted
the
to
road to Atlanta 1996 with Izzy. And nobody had any idea if it was going to be a success, if Izzy was going to be a flop. And he was very polarizing. A lot of people loved, a lot of people hated. We got made fun of, etc. So I know, George, I'm sure there's a whole book about Izzy, or many books, but Izzy lives on.
Izzy lives on. I like that. We've had a couple questions looking ahead to the LA 28 games. If there's any predictions for the torch relay, if we know anything about how Coca-Cola will be involved, and Shannon, what your role will be. So I don't know if any of the three of you would like to make some predictions or share any information about our next Olympic Games.
I'll just start by saying, as Shannon mentioned before, having a games in our host country there's nothing like it. And Atlanta, Salt Lake City, LA, it's just such a gift and such a gift to all, not only US residents, but people all over the world. And as far as the torch relay, the Coca-Cola Company has been a sponsor. I am not up to date on what the plans are. If I was, that's a secret, and they want to do a big brand reveal. But be on the lookout. Coca-Cola, as I said, will be celebrating the 100th anniversary of their partnership with the IOC, the USOPC, Team USA in LA 28. So look for big things, just breakthrough, hopefully, and celebrations, because it's a big deal and very special, and as far as I'm concerned, the most important partnership we have. But I digress. I'm going to turn it over to Shannon. I know people want to know what your role is in LA as well.
It's always you can probably imagine it's a little bit of chaos leading up to the games, and some of the things are planned 8 years, 10 years in advance. Other things are like the month before. I usually find out about 6 months before the games what my role might be. I've done full-on commentary for men's and women's artistic gymnastics. I've been an analyst. I've done hospitality. I've done all three at once. So you never really know until kind of you get that call and they say, well, are you interested in doing this? But for me, just being a part of the games is so special in any way, shape, or form, whether it's as a fan, whether it's working, whether it's competing. I won't be doing that, I can tell you. But it's so fun for me. I love the Olympic movement. I love just the stories that come out of the Olympics. I love sharing those stories, the incredible work that people go through. And a lot of times we hear about the major athletes, right? But there's incredible stories of, the folks that are working 3 jobs and then also at night going in and training. And, a lot of those sports or athletes, they don't maybe get as much airtime on television. They don't get all the sponsor dollars, but they do it because they just love the sport and they love the Olympics and they want to compete for their country. And it's just such an amazing thing to be able to, have this goal that maybe one day you could compete at an Olympics, and then you have to really put that work in for years, year upon year, never really knowing if you're going to make it, but just in the hopes that you can do it. And so when you get there, forget about what medal or if there's a medal. You are an Olympian when you put on that uniform, whatever country you're coming from, you are now an Olympian and you will always be an Olympian.
We hear that a lot in the museum, so it's wonderful to hear it here as well. So, George, what about you? Any predictions for LA or any thoughts as we look ahead? George, can you hear me?
Yes, I did. I heard the last part of that question. Yes, I've got a prediction for LA. I think what our country needs, what our world needs more than anything right now is a sense of unity, a sense of national community. And the games always bring people together across all the boundaries that separate us. They're the only institution in the world, the only movement in the world that does that. And I think LA will break all the records. If you look at where we are in the history of the Olympics right now, okay, go back 5 years, we hit the pandemic. The games in Tokyo had to be postponed. And I think it'll be recorded as one of the great miracles of Olympic history that they were able to hold those games in Tokyo and then in Beijing 6 months later in a bubble inside a pandemic and give all those athletes, 15,000 athletes for the summer games, 5,000 for the winter, give all those athletes an opportunity, 10,500, excuse me, don't want to get that wrong. Give all those athletes an opportunity to fulfill their dreams on the global stage, despite the fact that there was a threat of an epidemic. And they managed it so well. All credit to Thomas Bach, and all credit to Thomas Bach for inventing this Agenda 2020 framework for hosting the games. Because you'll note, as we all know, that Paris was the most magical games ever. Paris broke all the records. 5 billion people, 5 billion, an audience of 5 billion people. That's more than half the world's population. It's never been that big. And then Milan broke all the records for the Winter Games. And that's because Agenda 2020 gave them the freedom to do new things, put surfing down in Tahiti or Fiji, put, snowboarding 4.5 hours away up in the mountains. And because they have that flexibility now, they're able to do games that become more magical and more interesting and more genuine in some ways. LA will be off the charts. It's an absolute guarantee because LA has always hosted great games. 84 saved the Olympic movement. Peter Uberoff's saved the Olympic movement. They went from having only one bid city in 1978, LA, to having 15 across the next 2 summer contests, and I think 16 across the next 2 winter contests because competitions bids because of what he demonstrated you could do with the games for a city. That really revitalized and launched the Olympic Games into the golden era that we are still enjoying today. So I think LA is going to be a smash and going to be a great success for everybody.
I know we all are right there with you, hoping and expecting that for sure. So I'm glancing through the chat here, and I'm seeing a couple more questions. One is, do you think Atlanta will bid again for the games in the future? Will we ever be seeing a second Atlanta Games?
You know,
George, I'll let you answer that.
all right, Dina, thank you. They've changed the bid process. So now, uh, guys like me I was the lead writer on 10 consecutive Olympic bid campaigns, and that they don't have campaigns like that. If you want to bid now, you just pick up the phone and call the IOC headquarters in Lausanne and say, hey, my city is interested in bidding. Who do we talk to? And they talk to you. They tell you what they want to know what your plans are for the future. And if you've got a good plan, and you can show how the games will fit into or accelerate that plan without burdening the taxpayers with any extra expense or anything, they're willing to talk. And so, yeah, it's possible. It's very possible that somebody in Atlanta might get the spirit again and decide it's time to go and knock on the door at Coca-Cola and say, will you support us in this? And of course, Coke stayed neutral because Coke had operations in all 6 cities. Coke is global and Coke has to support everybody equally, but it was very special for them when Atlanta won. And so, yeah, Atlanta might bid again, but probably not in my lifetime. And I probably won't be working on the bid if it does come up.
I think that's pretty fair. I'm seeing some comments here. Nick Walliver, who is a member of the International Society of Olympic Historians, has shared that Lake Placid and New York City have a bid team in the works for 2040 or later. So it'll be really interesting to see what comes up and see where we're going after the current set. I think we have 4 more named games where we go after that. So
yeah, we can't forget that we've got Utah.
Yep, Utah 34.
Atlanta was 6 years before Salt Lake, and that was a beautiful Olympic period for the United States because those 2 games connected, despite the political traumas that we had in 9/11 right before Salt Lake. And now we have, LA in 28, and we have Utah 2034 again. It's going to be another one of those magical Olympic, Paralympic periods for the United States.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, I do want to give all 3 of our speakers a chance to share any final thoughts about the future games or Atlanta. Dina, do you want to go? Do you want to go first?
I do. First of all, thank you, Lindsay and team, for having us.
Yes.
This has brought back so many special memories. And like I said, once you get into the Olympics, I mean, I'm an Olympic junkie for life. These are my people. This is my place. And it's the athletes, it's the sponsors, it's the volunteers, it's whoever's got that Olympic memory and moment. And I just want to give a shout out to the US Olympic and Paralympic Museum as a proud board member. And I've got my pin on. I encourage all of you to please go to the museum in Colorado Springs. It's the best kept secret that we don't want to be a secret. We want everybody to go. And definitely now that Shannon Miller's scrunchie is there, you have to go. But it is interactive. It's special. The professional team has done an amazing job, and you will not forget it. Let that be your first. But we invite you to go and enjoy and bring back the memories of Atlanta 96 and everything in between.
Yeah. Thank you, Dina. And we really appreciate you as a board member and for participating today. So thank you for your kind words. So George and Shannon, any final thoughts to share?
I'll let Shannon, the champion, go last, have the last word. Dina mentioned the torch relay. My brother ran the torch from New Jersey into Pennsylvania and handed off to my sister. And my mother and father, who are subsequently, they're gone, but my mother was there watching, and she called me afterward and she said, honey, if we could bottle that spirit up, the world would be a much better place. One place where that spirit is bottled, where you get to feel it, where you get to see it, where you get to experience it, is at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Museum in Colorado Springs. And if you want a great family vacation, the Garden of the Gods up in the mountains, Pike Peak in the background, the training center. There's so much to do here in Colorado Springs. It's such a beautiful place. And in about a month, we're going to open an exhibit on Baron Pierre de Coubertin, the founding of the modern games, and the Americans who supported that effort. Without the Americans, there would not be a modern Olympic Games. So I hope you'll all come and visit the museum in Colorado Springs. It's great.
I second all of George's comments.
Well,
Shannon.
I agree with Dina and George on all of it. I cannot wait to get out to the museum. I mean, I've seen a good amount and heard a good amount, but there's nothing like being there. So I'm excited to go visit. Thank you, Lindsay, and all of your team for having us on today. I guess I would just say, I didn't grow up an Olympic fan. I had never seen the Olympics before I had competed in them. I think I saw one of Mary Lou Retton's vaults, and I think that was about. Oh, and I saw the Miracle on Ice. That was on VHS tape because I was only 3 when it happened. But it's those moments that sparked something in me to train and to go after something that was so much bigger than myself, so much bigger than my city or my team or even my state. And I love that the Olympics inspires people to do something, even if it's not sports, even if it's not the Olympics. It inspires you to go after your dream with everything you have. And that's never going to die. I love that the Olympic movement does that for not only the athletes that are there, it does it for the volunteers that are helping out, for the spectators that are there soaking it all in, learning about these stories. And I mean, it still inspires me every time I hear or watch an Olympic Games or hear a story. It's so important to kind of keep that movement alive because it really is something that lives inside of you each day, this ability to believe that you are bigger than you think, the resilience that you're seeing, and you know that if they can do it, well, I can do it too. They fall and get back up. Well, when I hit a challenge, I can get back up. The importance of teamwork and goal setting and a commitment to excellence. These are things that we take with us for every part of our lives. It doesn't stay at the Olympic Games. And so that's what I hope that people gain from being around the Olympics in whatever form that takes, whether it's a sponsor, whatever that is, because it's so important. For me, I am now an Olympic junkie. I went from competing at the games where I really didn't get to see a lot of the rest of the activities going on, a lot of the rest of the sports, because I was, blinders on, just competing and training. But then being able to work the games and watch the games and see the games through my children's eyes has just been so spectacular. So I just want to say thank you to every single person out there, and it's a lot, that make the games work.
There's so much that goes into it, and being able to talk about these Atlanta Games from all 3 of your different perspectives and your memories and what you've shared today has really been so special. So I want to thank all of our speakers. This really has been an incredible conversation, and I'm so grateful to Shannon Miller, George Herthler, and Dina Gerson for sharing their thoughts and their recollections with us today. Also, thank you to our audience for joining us. Programs like Games History Hour are only possible because of your support. Your donations and membership in the museum help us to continue to offer these conversations free of charge and expand the ways that we can share Team USA stories around the world. If you'd like to support this work, you can visit our website. I know Annie has dropped it in the chat. It's usopm.org/donate. And you can also on our website explore upcoming programs, plan a visit to the museum. Shannon, we hope to see you here soon, and connect with us by signing up for our newsletter. We have some great exhibits coming up. Lots of new things here at the museum. The World Olympic Collectors Fair is going to be in Colorado Springs next weekend, so I invite you all to come check that out as well. It's going to be really incredible. And we hope to see everyone soon. So thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, Lindsay. Cheers.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you.